This project is a bike backpack cover with LEDs along one of the reflective strips. It uses a cell holder which has a light sensor on it, which means the LED automatically comes on when it's dark. Here you can see the reflective strip, and here are the two LEDs, and here's the light sensor. If I just cover that up, you can see that when it goes dark the lights come on. When I take my hand away and it goes light again, the light goes off. I could also have the LEDs just sitting underneath the surface of the fabric, because they're powerful enough to shine through the material, so rather than having to cut holes in the fabric here. And notice that there is no visible stitching around where the LEDs are, so all the stitching is going to be hidden underneath the layers of fabric. We've got two layers here, the reflective tape and this one here, so when we're stitching we just need to be careful we don't come through to the right side by accident. The fabric for this backpack here doesn't fray, so I've been able to cut holes in the material to poke the LED and the sensor through, but you'll need to check your fabric that you're using to make sure whether you need to neaten the edge of your holes or not. You'll need a bike backpack cover, and as you can see this just slots over an ordinary backpack. You'll also need a light sensor cell holder, which actually looks very similar to the switch cell holder, but on the back it has a light sensor just here, and this is what's got to poke through your fabric. We're going to use two PCB LEDs, and you can see that the little light sensor just there on the cell holder is very similar in appearance to the LEDs, so that means that it won't look out of place on the bag when it's finished. We're also going to need a cell holder and some conductive thread and just some ordinary sewing thread in a colour that's going to match the back of the backpack holder. First step is to cut some square shaped holes the size of the little sensor on the back of the cell holder, so the little sensor will just poke through just like that. The cell holder sits on the inside of the backpack cover with the little light sensor going through the hole in the material, and it's just sitting along this band that's on the right side of the fabric. I've just started to stitch the negative side of the cell holder onto this layer of fabric here. I'm being particularly careful not to let any of the stitches go through to the right side of the fabric, because we don't want to see any of those. So we're just picking up this sort of inside layer just here. So I've stitched this side of the cell holder down using some oversewn stitches, and I'm just doing the negative side of the LED. So notice how my negative side of my cell holder and my negative side of my LED are matching. I've just got some little running stitches in between the two. Notice we have another negative marking on our cell holder here. We just ignore that one. We're not going to use that one. That's just going to be used for stability later on. You'll see that in use towards the end. Stitching the final LED in place with my oversewing stitches. Notice again my negative is in line with my negative on my cell holder at the bottom here, and they're all joined up with these running stitches that go from one LED to the other down to the cell holder. And just also notice that there are no visible stitches on the right side. Again, it's just that invisible stitch that you're doing underneath this layer of material just here. Starting to work on the positive side of my circuit now, so I've already stitched down this connector here. Notice this one, again this is our sort of extra one, again this is not going to form part of our circuit. We'll stitch that down just to stop it from flapping about a little bit towards the end, but it's not going to be stitched with our conductive thread. I've taken my thread, little running stitches that just go underneath the layer of fabric, so again we can't see it on the right side, so just to take it along the side of my cell holder, keeping it well away from the connections, the negative connections, and well away from my row of stitches that's over on the other side. What I'm going to do is just going to stitch down these two sides of the LEDs just here. My circuit's now complete with my two LEDs stitched in place along the positives with those running stitches, going between the LEDs again and back to the circuit, and then I can just slide my cell into the cell holder with the positive side facing upwards. And don't forget just to switch, check your on switch is on your board, because otherwise obviously it won't work. The last stage will just be to stitch these two little holes here down. We can just use ordinary thread for those. These holes are cut accurately. You should find your LEDs, and your light sensor should sit in place and not move. But if you are worried about that, you can put a little bit of glue, fabric glue, underneath the cell holder and the LEDs, just to keep that in place. You can also put a fabric strip along here, so perhaps something that lifts up if you're a little bit concerned about this area getting damaged as it rubs against the inside of the backpack.